Here he is, calling over here. Okay, Mike. Whoop, there he goes. So here we go again. They are blocking the calls, Heidi.
I am here. How you doing?
I'm great. I am great. Okay, were they blocking our calls again tonight?
No, I think we're good to go.
Okay, great. Well,
I
great to
think we're
have
good
you
to
here
go.
tonight, Mike. Really is. I haven't watched 1 minute of the debate. I've just decided I didn't want to. I didn't. Have you have a chance to check on what's going on?
Yeah, I saw the whole thing.
Okay, is it over?
No, they're still talking,
Okay,
but I believe people have made up their minds.
can you
I think it
get
was about over.
can you give me, without me saying anything, can you give us an assessment of what you witnessed?
Well, Trump was strong, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and Biden was a bit defensive as far as he was put in a position where he would defend some of his choices, and of course they had odds on who did best for the country, right?
Right,
But I
right.
do believe investors have made up their minds already. I do
Really?
believe they have. Every time Trump spoke, I was watching the numbers, some of the live investment numbers, and every time Trump spoke, right, more investors would, of course, put in. It was a positive feedback, bit of a withdrawal. So what we have here is that even the people that like Biden, they probably don't have a lot of confidence in his strength.
Right.
There's no resolve here. Now tonight's debate did not show how they're going to put the country forward. That didn't happen. It was a lot of the blame thing and explaining, but it did show that Trump is passionate about what he believes in, right? So you know what I believe? I believe this. There was another case when a Republican president was invited to a Democratic sitting, and then he converted the Democrats to a conservative vote. We may be seeing partially that same thing. There's a lot of
Ah,
anger involved, right? So to get the feedback will not be instant, but people are going to think about this debate, and they're going to start now. He did get Trump on two things. January 6th, of course, that's a bad spot. Nobody responded good to that,
right,
right?
right.
Because they know people were guilty going in there. They're not quite buying that they were innocent, but they didn't seem to. Nothing else was an issue, right? Nothing else was an issue. So they have a lot of confidence in Trump, right? As far as his that it means this. It means they know he's not a perfect person.
Right. Nobody
They
is.
understand his character, but that he is focused on the financial stability of this nation, right? That's what he's
And they
focused on.
trust you. You feel like they trust that he does actually understand the economics.
Oh
He's
yeah,
yeah.
his passion behind having money restored back in this country that's what they were responding to.
Right.
So they've already made up their minds. The investors have, right? They already made up their
That's pretty
minds.
big then, because
Yeah.
and the European nations and some of the G7 summits and everything, they're pretty well know where they've made their minds up where this needs to go to
Yeah.
turn the ship around. So
They have no well, we face a time where there's no real alternative, right?
right,
And but there's a lot more to come behind that. I think that folks ought to. This really is a time where the Christian community is. They have their placement now, where they take their place in the world stage. I hope so. Um, but I know if they don't, Pastor Paul, there are forces in this world that are rising.
right.
I know that if a person is not, if they're not actually covered, who professes to be Christian, but somebody who walks as a Christian, if they're not walking as a Christian, I mean wholeheartedly, they're not covered. And if they're not covered, they're going to be usurped. They're going to be used by these dark forces against everybody else. Satan himself is the author of confusion. Wherever confusion is, Satan is present,
That's true.
right?
That's true.
So there's no clarity so far. Right now, I can see that I can see Trump changing. Unfortunately, I can also see Biden declining. He's He's declining.
Yeah.
That's just
And
happening.
was that
But
evident in
oh
the
yes,
yeah.
yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. He
Did
seemed to be
did they
fading pretty fast.
did they no, so obviously they talked about a lot of economical things. Did they talk anything about, let's say, foreign policy? Was that brought up?
Well, they tried. Okay, they tried. Trump's defense was they asked him about the war in Ukraine. They asked him about the Palestinian state. Would he support Palestinian state? But president, we wouldn't have been in a war anyway. Now that's a common answer.
Right.
But I saw a pullback with investors on that. Right, that
Yeah.
didn't give
That's not a
investors
good
any
enough
security
answer. Right.
whatsoever.
Right.
They need a plan going forward.
Right.
I believe that. It's the nature of Republicans and Democrats. Let's go ahead and face it. Here it is. So Democrats like to talk. They like discussion. They like dialogue, which takes years to get through.
Yeah.
Republicans are action people. Now, they may be brazen in certain areas,
Right.
but anytime you're given a leadership role, like the president, based on the predicament the country's in, there's a time and a season for talks at the table, but there's a time and a season to bring out bring out the corrective belt and say, well, somebody's going to get it if this mess doesn't get straightened up. So if people can honestly realize that, we have a powerhouse of leadership that we could have. The problem is people are so divided, they will not use the best portions of people. Right. I get that from how the Lord works. He didn't put us here on this earth individually. He put us here collectively. Right. Like you and I, Pastor Paul, that dream I had about you, that's undeniable. Right. So I know your placement in the kingdom. Right. I know your placement in the kingdom.
Yes.
But collectively, we're doing the work for the kingdom collectively.
Right.
And we didn't even coordinate it. That's the funny. We didn't coordinate it. It's just what the Lord did, and He drew something together.
God put us together because He's coordinating it, right?
Right. So imagine in the United States leadership. Now, Trump is good with finances, right? Despite what anybody thinks, this guy is a bulldog when it comes to watching out because he's supposed to be broke right now. He's not.
No.
He was supposed to be broke many years ago. He's not.
No.
So what does that tell you? That means this guy is resilient. He's willing to do whatever it takes to stay in a specific position. Plus, he has other people in a specific position. If they would utilize that, my goodness, if they would utilize that, we could go so far. Biden, he's not so much in front of the people, not that type person, right? But he is a motivator, right, behind certain administrative deeds. That's very important for Washington. That's why he's lasted. So you can't last in Washington that long, right? And be a failure. This guy's not a failure. He's just not a people person. He shouldn't be out there in front of the podium talking to people. He's not convincible. He's not relatable. He's not not relatable, but he's just not a good orator, right? He's not articulate behind certain subjects, and he stutters. He has that stammering stutter thing going on.
Yeah.
But they won't utilize the best portions of each other to make a team. So I can see something else coming forward. I really do. I think now this is going to be wild. Of course, I'm the guy that is wild anyway. So
go ahead. Let us have it.
I can see something is going to happen. It's going to happen. If either side does not relent, America's going to be drawn into something, right? Where the people will say, no, the people are going to be forced to stand up and reallocate. Something is going to happen that is so significant that every country in the world is going to reevaluate government, period.
Wow.
How about that? That's simply put.
Well, we had bring that up. We had yesterday we had a coup attempt in Bolivia. They come very close to taking out President Arce, I think is how you spell his name is spelled Arce, Luis Arce. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. General Juan Zuinga launched a coup. He had a part of he's a general, and he had part of the military. Right. Do you see, and maybe I don't even know what the politics of Bolivia is. I don't know who's conservative and who wasn't, or if that was even the story. But do you see more coups and these types of things happening?
Well, if that were enough, right? if that were enough, that if that happened in this country, if that were enough, that would be that. But that's not going to be enough. It has to be something far greater than that. No, we're talking about something that will potentially, if we don't step up to the plate, will set us back to the Stone Age, right? It's going to cause many reevaluations. So you're looking at a multi-country failure coming up.
So,
Now,
okay, so
here's the deal.
in other words, more countries than one, multi-country failure.
Oh yeah.
Explain that. Explain
because,
that.
well, I can see anybody who, it doesn't matter who gets into power. And it just doesn't matter who gets into power, because the heart, the soul of the places are not changing, right? They're not. The people are becoming more violent, more separated, more agitated. And everybody thinks they have the right solution, which means they're not seeking a solution from anybody else, right? That's called pride. That's just blatant pride.
Yeah.
So what will happen? Somebody's going to get into power. It doesn't matter who it is.
Right.
Somebody's going to get into power. And other countries are going to start, they're going to do their thing and begin to take advantage. In the meanwhile, we're going to have a breakdown in as far as this international co-op that we have going right now, right? It's already falling apart. So let me give you an example of that. You do know that Russia is ready to join in the Middle East in the fight to protect certain assets against Israel.
I always worried about it. I know they. Tell us how you know that Russia is.
Well, they've already committed assets. They've started. The chatter has started. The U.S. is aware of this. The U.S. is highly aware of this.
Okay.
They're trying to get Israel. This is why they've been trying to get Israel to back down a little bit, to come out to maintain some sort of policy. Because if Russia gets involved, which they will, well, you know what that's going to turn into. They also committed up to, I believe it was 500,000 more troops, and they bought out some new weaponry, some new tanks.
Russia?
These are not old tanks. Yes. Now these tanks are not deployed yet. They've been deploying other people's assets and old assets, but they bought out some new things. Now we're talking about Russia. We're talking about Russia who has a vaccine against lung cancer, right? We're talking about Russia who actually has a vaccine against a few cancers that has been highly successful.
Wow.
That the UK has been investing in. They've invested trillions of dollars in this. See, these are things the world does not know about. So we have a paradigm shift happening right now. China also. Do you know what's happening with China? Do you know that China is becoming very, how can I say this? Different concerning Christianity. Something is changing in China concerning Christianity. And it's not, we're not talking about prosecution. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about China is changing their. And so we could likely see the establishment of some sort of some Christian base or something, right? In other words, a friendly place for Christianity in China. So China's starting to adopt some views that are not China, right? This isn't traditional China. There's something else that's happening. Everything is beginning to shift. All the while, America still argues, and we're still we're still in a stalemate against ourselves.
We're in a political.
The rest of the world is beginning to move on.
We're in a political quagmire.
Yeah, wait, no, that's one way to put it. That's one way to put it. And so the people, Pastor Paul, are going to call for a halt to this, right? If the people have to stand up and dismiss all leadership, they have all right. They can do that. The people can do that. It will take an extreme situation to make that happen. But when the people find out that there is no solution to the problems we're in, see, everybody's looking for everything to change.
Right.
So imagine this. Imagine if they get worse, no matter who's in power.
That would be bad, and that could that could be what happens.
Because if looking at what's been happening in the world, even though there should have been solutions by now, nothing has been working. Nothing. It's almost like some supernatural obstacle is against everything we go to do. Something, and I would say that is mainly spiritual. In other words, it's almost like the Father is not going to let us have some human solution to this supernatural problem. We're going to have to seek higher authority and get we're going to be blocked at every single turn. And then biblically, didn't the same thing happen to Israel? Didn't the same thing happen to other kingdoms in the past where the Lord blocked them from prospering? No matter what they did, they could not prosper until they humbled themselves or until they turned back to each other and started seeing each other as people, right? So we're right that same path. So we could face a position where Trump or whoever it is gets in power and it gets worse. Nothing works. This could actually happen. Now, if that happens, people are going to be very confused. Right? It's not going to be Trump's fault. It won't be the person's fault, whoever's in there. It'll just be one of those spiritual things that the church is going to have to come to terms with. When the church comes to terms and they say, wait a minute, we have to do something, that's when things will turn around, because there's a standing promise that if we, those who are called by his name, right, would humble ourselves, turn and seek his face, then he would hear from heaven.
Amen.
So long as we're not humbled, he's not going to hear us collectively.
Nope.
Not collectively. And so this is what we're in right now. So long as they keep saying, so long as these sides, Democrat and Republican, continue to say, I'm right and the other guy's wrong, they're messing up already. They have forgotten that they're blessed, number one. They have forgotten that this country was formed by a blessing that was bestowed upon men to persevere and to get through these impossible times. They've forgotten all that. They've forgotten.
Amen.
I am the solution. That's what they're saying. I am the solution. No, they're not the solution. Man, it's not the solution. Because if they continue this route, any man who comes on the stage and is actually the solution, that's the person I'm getting away from. Because we all know what power will be bestowed upon certain people during this end age, right?
Yep.
We don't want a guy who can by himself fix everything, absent the power of the Holy Ghost, the power of Christ, prayer, and all these other things. We don't want that. But this is what we're facing. And I do not believe that an antichrist is going to come from this country. I don't either.
I don't either. As a matter of fact, there's really no biblical. I mean, look, when we read about it in Daniel about the qualifications, or you hear about the Assyrian. Yep. You see that term. You see the beast from the east shall rise. The kings of the east. Yeah.
Lineage is wrong. There's a small people right now in the Middle East that's starting to come up, and this guy he travels the provinces of Asia, not America, right? The provinces of Asia. He comes up from a small people. He does what his fathers have not done, right? He scatters among them the prey, the spoils, and the riches, and his lineage is wrong. It's just absolutely wrong. Of course, back in the day, people have been dispersed and separated, yes, but America has its placement. But there's some elements people are not aware of too. There are things happening in the Middle East that people are just not aware of. They're not aware of, and you really can't talk about them because the world requires demonstration, or people will say no, but they'll believe it soon enough. It just hasn't built up to a point yet where it affects everybody. And I'm talking about the spiritual manifestations have not built up yet. See, a time is coming, Pastor Paul, when everybody's going to believe in life forms outside this planet.
Talk to us
Everybody
about
will
that.
believe that.
Our next
and they will mount a war. They're going to mount a war against what's coming. Now, the Bible tells us what's truly coming is the Lord and 10,000 of his holy ones, right?
Amen. Hallelujah.
Not E.T., the Lord. No. But the Antichrist mounts up the forces of the earth to fight the living God and all of his angels and everybody else. That's what he does. His kingdom is thrust into darkness. 1,000 years of peace is established, and then they do it again. So the are quite dominant. So that means there's going to have to be a force on earth that will introduce people to the spiritual things. And do you know that's happening outside? It's happening every single day, Pastor Paul. Every single day. Every day. Do you know there, for example, it was a sighting, was that last week, I believe it was in Rome. There was a sighting where over 2,000 people saw I mean, close up. And we're not talking about little balls in the sky anymore. We're not talking about that.
All right.
A sighting in Rome. There's been a sighting in Tehran. There's been a sighting in Iran, or the southern part of Iran. There's been a sighting in Jerusalem.
Well, what do they see? What?
No, they're seeing craft that we're not talking about discs. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something that looks. It just, you can't describe it. It just looks wrong. Doesn't look like it's supposed to fly. People are starting to see illuminated birds. How would you like to see a flock of birds, and when they flap the wings are lit up?
I would be wondering if what kind of.
Right.
Well, I would first.
They're seeing them they're seeing them overseas. They're seeing them.
Is that some kind of drone
in Europe? They're seeing them here in the USA. No, they're not birds at all.
Are they drones? Are they?
No, they're not drones. This is not man-made stuff.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
This is just part of the changing of the time. And when it becomes, because a day will come where there won't be a day where people will not notice something like that happening. And you got to remember, how do we know this time is coming? Because everybody is starting to go back to these ancient false
scripts
gods. And they're going back to the ancient false gods again. They're starting to believe in Egyptian prophecy. They're starting to believe in all these other different prophecies, and they've drifted away from sound doctrine. Absolutely. People have orchestrated fights against Christ.
Yep.
You have false prophets that are popping up all over the place that have hundreds of millions of people following them. There's one person who just outright said that I'm not going to repeat his words, but he said that Jesus is a falsehood, this, that, and the other. This guy has over 2.6 billion followers.
What?
And it's growing. Yeah. So you have lots of those people coming out. Now, the momentum behind these people, that's your proof in the pudding. They shouldn't have a following if the world did not believe in what they were saying. So what we see is the world believing in what they're saying. There was a time when people were neutral. They say, well, I'm not going to deal with that. That's not what they're doing. They're following these people.
So does that mean the world is really ripe for the Antichrist to begin to come on the scene? Do you feel
it's almost like people are calling for it. They don't want Christ.
Right.
When you really start looking into people, they don't want Christianity. They don't want Christ. They don't want a biblical story.
No.
They're tired of the Gospels. They will no longer endure or put up with or tolerate sound doctrine anymore. They won't do it. Right.
No.
It's probably part of the reason why the church is right now. The church, for example, how people used to they would really get into church. They would really feed what the Lord was doing. They've drawn back from that. Right. I mean, if you don't, it's almost like in these days, if you don't press a person to remind a person, hey, you're going to do anything for the church, they won't do it. They don't want to.
You have to bring.
There's be prompted.
No.
I ask people all the time, don't let your local churches fail. That is the congregation's responsibility.
Absolutely.
God called the pastor, and if you like the food, right, keep
feeding them.
Get the restaurant in good order so that you can have good food.
Right.
Because nobody goes to a restaurant, they like the food but won't pay.
No.
Right. If you like something, take care of it. It's not some scheme or something like that. Just take care of what you're being fed by. It's as simple as that.
Yep.
But of course, that's being lost, and everything is turned into this corporate mindset. You're people
right.
are saying, well, how can I profit? This, that, and the other. Anyway, this is a paradigm shift. I'm talking about on all levels. And
I'm going to ask you a question also. This has come up this week, and people have been asking, could you find out what Mike thinks about it? It's kind of shocking to me, but I knew there were FEMA camps from a long time ago. We knew about these, but now there seems to be the reports we're getting is there's new they're calling them internment camps. Now, that's a term, and that's why I wrote the novel I wrote called Mark of the Beast RFID, which is only at my website. I never did. I self-published it, just stuck it on my website, but it's a story of the end time scenario. In it, there were internment camps, and that's what the word I got from the Lord in the dream, and so I wrote that in the book. I even ended up being bused to one of these internment camps in the book. I write it that way. And now I'm hearing that very term, which is freaking me out. Is there any validity to that? Is there something going on of preparation for mass containment in case of a catastrophe or a war or a
Well, you
pandemic.
remember Jade Helm, right?
Yes.
Jade Helm, actually, they began to start utilizing certain places like that. I believe it was Jesse Ventura
Yes.
that were like that. So, but with Jade Helm, the subject popped up again. That's when, in fact, Pastor Paul, I think I contacted you and I was talking about incinerators.
Yes, you
The
did.
incinerators they had around the country.
That blew me away too. I was just like
Yeah,
stunned. Yes.
they had incineration facilities. And shortly after that, they began to decommission some of those incineration facilities, but they kind of propped up the other ones. They even have a rail system that supports the incineration of bodies. And they have these cars where they chain people down hand and foot, right, on the floor.
What?
So there are 4 sets of chains per person, which go to these internment camps, right, where the fence is, the concertina is turned inwardly. So it's like they won't let,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry, it's turned outwardly so nobody can get in.
Yeah.
These camps are made so nobody can get in.
Not made to keep people in. They're made
Right,
to.
just so nobody can get in. So what you see here, because I'll stand by it, a time is coming when people are going to try and get into those places to be protected. Now, they're propping up these places because of the immigration problem and because of new terrorist threats.
Okay.
There's been, as of late, since the 29th of last month, I'm sorry, the 22nd of last month or something like that, there have been some major security problems. There have been some major security threats to this nation. Just like Europe is under one of the highest threats they've ever been under right now. We're not too far away from them. But there have been some major threats, some very valid threats. The chatter used to be you could estimate by conversation, by communications. Right? If anybody thinks that somehow they can't ping every communications device to get a count on how many people are communicating, that's just not truthful. They can. So the estimates now are in the hundreds of millions of people are talking about nefarious things against this country, inside this country. Right?
Yes.
I'm sorry, hundreds of millions. We only have 300 some million people in this country, right? So how in the world can there be hundreds of millions of people talking about actions against this country? Because of the world stage, right? We no longer have borders. Social media has evaporated the borders. There are no borders.
That's true.
So you have people living in this country who are loyal to their respective countries. Anyway, there have been some severe threats and declarations. They have already declared they're going to take down this nation. There have been presidents or people of other countries who lead those countries who said, do anything you can against America. Begin to strike her now, right? So you have all these countries that are getting ready for this. It is so bad that we had to dispatch. The Navy has their hands full with North Korea, right? They have their hands full.
Oh yeah,
North
but
Korea
I mean,
and the Middle East.
didn't they fire another ballistic missile this week?
We have new fleet deployments going out there, out all over the place. My prayers with all those who have children in the Navy, because they're being deployed all over the place. They have to. They're going to increase our ship production. They have emergency ship production is happening right now. They can't really tell everybody because of our financial situation and instability with the elections. But our national defense must increase. It must double fairly quickly. Russia's doing the same thing. Russia's introducing new technology. Everybody is beyond the point of getting ready for a war. They're actually beginning to face off. And so everybody should expect missiles in the air, right? Everybody should expect incursions here and there. But most importantly, we're under threat right now. The USA is under threat right now. We have our nuclear facilities, right? And they're about to build one of the largest nuclear facilities anybody has ever seen right here in America. You know that, don't you?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, they're gonna take on the challenge of feeding to take up all the rest of the power needs with a ginormous nuclear facility. I mean, one of the most advanced. All the scientists are involved.
So, in other words, instead of changing the power grid into being run Rolf, massive nuclear energy. Yes, or are we
Right, right.
talking?
Well,
Or are we talking weaponry?
you're
Building.
looking at a centralized place where the power is going to be fed from, right? And then the grid will be reestablished from there. So most of these nuclear power plants will turn into relay
I
stations.
got you. You're going to
They're
have
going
a
to do
big
that
one
for
in this.
security.
So where
Right.
are they going to build this one at? I mean, is it somewhere right in the
I'm
center?
not sure yet, but they start building this year.
Okay.
And it's not going to take long. Oh, but the other thing is this, the reason why they're doing that is because the other facilities are under threat. We have too many. Right? We have
Ah,
too much uranium and reactors that could go down. They're already raggedy. Nobody has put enough money into it, right? So the regulatory commissions have warned about this for years.
yep.
Now that they're under threat, now that you cannot trust individuals in, let me give you an example of something. Do you know that people have been fired from these nuclear facilities in the last 2 weeks more than ever before? And the reason why is because they have suspicions of sabotage coming from too many people. So, but they're embedded now. It's very difficult to find out who these people are, what their loyalties are. So we've been living under this threat for a long time, and it's only a matter of time before it takes effect. Communications right now, expect spotty communications to happen again. Do you know they're still investigating what happened to the cell phones? And when I say investigating, they're trying to fortify their systems so that can't happen again. It was an effective hack. That was a hack.
Ah,
And that's public knowledge. That was a hack.
it was a hack.
They know it was a hack. They already admitted to that. They did that in a very slick way. They said because it was a hack, we need to investigate how to stop further hacks. That's what they said. We need to investigate how to stop further hacks. So that was their admittance that they know what happened. But this hit all the way to government communications also. It also shut down part of the defense system as far as their communications. They only had underlying.
Well,
So these things are getting worse.
the Russian, he's a secretary of like national defense. His name's Pezov. He said that we need to weaponize space. We need to hit the Americans. Every Russian should, when you get the chance, inflict harm on the West, especially the United States. Do anything, attack their infrastructure. So, to me, it was like a call out to lone wolf terrorists that are planted in different parts of America and maybe even in, let's say, Europe. And they were angry because the United States had pulled the dollar being the currency that they could back their money with. And he was very angry. So do you see this? Do you see a terroristic approach, not just from the Middle East, but even Russia itself, to be used? And are they doing it already?
Russia and Iran.
Okay, folks, whatever that question was, that didn't go over very well. We just lost Mike on that one. But he's back. Okay, Mike, that one was a...
That one totally was. Anyway.
Was that a touchy subject here when I'm asking, apparently?
Well, your two main terrorists, right, your terrorist sponsors regarding calls against America are Russia, as far as hacking, is Russia and Iran. Those two
more
are
than more than China.
One and the same. One and the same.
All right.
China has a different role. China is more like an administrator, right? And they're working at breakneck pace from the Earth to the moon, regardless of what people believe or not. China has a heavy presence on the moon, I can say, which is why we're trying to rush to get there, and it's not working out too well. But that if you believe the current space program that we have.
Well, there's more than one.
View of this.
We got a public space program.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep in mind that the USA understood a long time ago that if you're going to have public oversight of things, right, it slows down progress, right? That
right.
People die. But America lost its taste for people dying, right? They don't want to see people dying for anything. So you can't really make progress. progress is risky. They understand this, and so they have to do this with a different space program, without public accountability, without oversight, right? As part of the black budget, that's what that's for. And so they pursued other agendas outside of the public's view, what the public does not know about. The term is, this is what they say, what the public does not know about, they won't cry about.
Okay.
So, and nobody questions the black budget, right?
Nobody even understands.
Nobody does.
Is there more than one black budget in our government?
No, they have one. They have one. So when $22 trillion, it goes missing, right? Nobody has a right to question. And anybody who attempts that, they only do it one time.
Wait a minute,
that's why you don't hear anybody challenge.
Well, we're only 34 trillion. Only, I say, 34 trillion in debt. 22 trillion went in the black budget.
Well, Pastor, most of the public budget is bogus. Computer numbers.
It's bogus.
It's not real. It's just not real, right? To be honest, we should have tanked a long time ago, right? But we didn't. We should have collapsed a long time ago, but we didn't. So it should let everybody know something. We'll run out of food, run out of materials and everything else, yet people still have money, which means money is based off something different than what they think. They do things differently. They made up the system. They manage that system, and we have that task of trying to find out what that system is and to live within that system. But make no mistake, they're sitting behind these doors controlling it. Anyway, that's that problem. Yeah, they won't question the black budget, but they're doing things, which means America we have advancements. Unless you're in a real wartime situation, they cannot publicize advances. They have cures, right? I'll give you an example of something.
Okay.
It was a person I knew with third-degree burns. He was an officer.
Wow.
That person 2 days later did not have third-degree burns.
No way.
That's a fact. And that's common in the military. If people would pay attention, they'll discover that. They'll discover people get cursing.
They don't use that technology or that healing of properties with the general public.
No, they can't. You're talking about officers who have sworn an oath to the armed services, right?
Right.
Policy setters. And so they have a specific discipline about them. They're not going to go outside that disciplinary.
I got you. They will maintain classification. They will not break it. Right.
Civilians are largely undisciplined.
Yes.
Independent, right? They're not they're not team players, so to speak. And so they're not, if they get all fixed up and healthy again, they could turn on you in a heartbeat, and they have a legal right to do so. They're independent. And so they're not going to give that to civilians like that. They're not going to do that. I knew a guy who was who was on drugs pretty heavy, a lieutenant. And instead of putting this guy out because of his parents, probably, this guy was off drugs the next day. No withdrawals, no anything.
Just Narcan.
No, it was a Narcan. No, this guy was on some stuff for about a year.
Wow. And instantly they could just break that addiction?
There are other people like that. There are other people like that who have been on drugs, and they can stop that addiction. These narcotics are part of a control mechanism, right? They know about the binding and everything else. They know what they can or cannot do, right? That addiction can be broken through something very minimal. They already know about that. They know how that mechanism works, but they will not give that to the public. They won't. See, all these things, it's coming to a head. You know, in the word when it says all these secrets are going to be brought out to the light. So when they come out to the light, people are not going to be happy.
No.
If the wrong people fall, right? If the wrong people fall, which is about to happen, they come out. They're going to come out. You have some very disgruntled people that are working inside, even in intelligence and dark projects. They have, Umbra clearance and things of that nature, and they're going to start coming out. When they do, it's going to cause a firestorm, but by that time, they're going to do it in a time where other things are revealed.
So as we go forward, one of the things I was going to say, I brought the Yellowstone prophecy, and Mike, I'm just going to throw this out there for you. What I'm calling it that is because a white buffalo calf was born in Yellowstone, the Native Americans have, I mean, from many tribes, have converged into Yellowstone and had a major gathering and saying that this was a very sacred sign that we had better take care of the earth. Now we're not talking about global warming, I mean, or new, inconvenient truth or the Green New Deal, but just stewardship of the earth. They believe was from the Creator, warning us that you better take care of the earth. Now the Bible does say this in Revelation. Actually, God will condemn those who don't take care of the earth. I think it was the first, really the only thing that Adam was required to do was dress the garden. Just don't mess it up. Now, I know this is not biblical, this white buffalo calf. I understand that. But do you think God, in his infinite wisdom, does groups of people maybe that from different cultures, is God doing different ways to speak to people to try to bring them to the knowledge of the truth? Is there any of that possible?
Yeah, I'll say this carefully. I think that the Lord speaks to us in a language we understand, right?
That's right.
So he's not proving anything to any of us, but by speaking to us, very well put, by the way, by speaking to us in a way that we understand, he will get our attention.
Right.
He'll get our attention. And once he has our attention, it's just like this white buffalo prophecy from I believe it's from, what's it called? The 7 council fire. Dakota, the Sioux, and some other tribes. They got together and they believe in a prophecy of this woman. They had a woman in their history, right?
Okay.
And this woman said she would come back as a white calf at the end of the age.
Wow.
Only at the end of the age. So although they just, I saw with the Yellowstone thing. Somebody was talking about that this morning. But I know for a fact that since 1995, white buffalo have been born since 1995, not before then. Right?
Wow.
Not before then in other Indian tribes. And so they've been saying the same thing too since 95. And sure enough, you look at these, at some of the phenomena in the earth since 95, everything has been changing. In fact, that was part of the turning points of just about everything was 1995. So I believe that
So it's sort of like a sign that you're at the end of the age when this white buffalo is seen, this calf.
Right. Now there's some differences because you have different tribes. This council of 7 council fires, they believe in one. Other Native American tribes, I believe in something different. To some, for example, the 7 council fires, they believe it's a sign of better days ahead. This is what they believe, right?
Okay.
Better days ahead. I personally don't believe that.
No.
I don't believe that at all. You have other tribes that say these white buffalo, when people start seeing these white buffalo, it is a call for them to remember the ways of old, and it's their last call. They don't get a call after that.
Okay.
Right? You still have another Indian tribe that says these white buffalo are going to be born in a specific generation. At the end of this generation, there's going to be a wailing in this country that nobody has ever heard before from human beings, right? It'll be so bad that even the spirits will come up and wail with the living who are dying. That's how bad it will be. So, all of them have their different themes from people. These are from their elders. They had Native Americans have a 12,000-year-old history. An oral 12,000-year-old history.
That's incredible.
So that goes back a long ways.
Yeah.
Right? And they honestly have the story of the fallen. They do.
Yes, they do.
Enoch's text perfectly. But you have all these different stories. I believe that all throughout history, we try to hang on to stories that were passed down orally, by storytelling and song. And of course, when you get to we're the ingenious, kind of dissect everything in a
Yeah.
very unnatural way. Kind of like the pantheon, like Zeus and all these characters. They were never meant to be known as gods. Never meant to be known as
Man
gods.
made them
There's
into
an ancient.
demagogues. Is
There's
it?
an ancient. Well, they were part of a memorable story to pass down a calendar to the future generation, but somehow they got they were about the planets and the stars and their movements and seasons, right? And these stories, the same thing. But what they did was literalized those songs. Back in the day, they used to do a lot of things like that, so people would remember the main points. But of course, they also had prophecies that people would not do that. They would rationalize it, and they do change things. So, I mean, even now, people think they know where his body is. They think they know that.
No,
right?
no, no, no.
The Ark of the Covenant, for example, in the Bible it says the Ark of the Testament. In the Old Testament, it was called the Ark of the Covenant, Ark of His Testament.
Right.
Right. It was called a couple names. In Revelation, it said that it's in heaven.
Yes.
A lot of people think it's here on earth.
It says
right,
that.
but it was taken up to heaven. Nobody's going to touch that power because it's not here. But they just ignore. A lot of people ignore that, and people that don't know that, they're honest people, but a lot of people don't know that, Pastor Paul. And so
Right.
the stories are being all jumbled up, just like the Lord said. In this day and age, it's going to be hard to find the truth.
It's
gonna become
because
more
of
and
the
more difficult to find the
confusion.
truth.
So
Yeah,
it is it's an interesting thing that this Yellowstone prophecy, this white, the Native Americans through legend, as you're saying, passed down for many years, knew that there was something significant about that, and probably
Right.
knew that would be at a certain time of great significance. And if you look at everything else that's going on in the world, and we're looking at really true Bible prophecy, we are in a very significant time.
We are.
So,
We are.
and like you said, God, I think, speaks to different groups of people in ways they understand. I think there's a scripture that says, except the people hear a certain sound, they won't prepare for battle. Okay,
Right,
they got to
right,
hear
right,
something familiar.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So
That's right.
God's a really great point that God is alerting humanity to the realization that His Son is coming, and
Right.
that things are about to change, are going to be different
That's
than
right.
ever before,
That's right.
and they better start seeking truth, and truth is in the Word of God,
Yes, it is.
and the gospel is reaching the different tribes of people around the world.
It is.
It really is.
And
you know.
you know what, Pastor? Not to interrupt, but I want to say this one thing that when for example, this white buffalo, right?
Yeah.
Even the Native Americans have different history behind this woman, the white buffalo woman.
Right.
She was to incarnate as a buffalo later. But think of something. Suppose they believe in that.
Yeah.
And then everything breaks out the wrong way. Now, at first, you'll have groups like the Hopi that'll come forward and say, "We told you so."
Yes, you're right.
And other doesn't even fit their narrative. What will happen, and I've noticed a pattern in the Bible, God will normally, it'll almost look like some other prophecy is going to come to pass, and then it all starts to fail. When it does, the people are speechless.
Yeah,
They're
they are.
speechless. And then they have no choice but to resort back to the thing that has not failed. Now, historically, the prophecies that have never failed are biblical prophecies.
Amen.
They've never
Absolutely,
failed. They've been
you're right.
long-standing, and they've never failed. Everything else
Failed.
has been, a hit or a miss here, but it's questionable here, and this, that, and the other. And what it does is, when it fails too much, people have to consider the concrete prophecy, which will draw
Amen.
even those questionable folks who would never come to Christ. Right? They'll come to
Yep,
Christ. They'll
yep.
say, "Well, he must be the one."
Because
right?
it sort of like the centurion soldier that said, when Jesus died on the cross and the sky turned dark and an earthquake shook Jerusalem, and he said, "Surely this must be the Son of God." Okay, no matter what all we believed,
right.
and he was being a centurion. Right. I'm sure the Romans, they had their gods. The Greeks had their gods. They had the demagogues.
Right.
But when you get right down to it, the only thing that you can concretely, factually have to admit is that the prophecies of the Bible are always dead on. They've never missed.
They are.
And
And they
it's just
are.
the truth.
And in hindsight, sometimes we can misinterpret anything, but in hindsight, we look back and say, there it was. There it was. All I had to do
Amen.
was wait. And so, yeah, I believe the Lord does that out of his mercy, right? To
Yep.
draw more people
Yep.
in to that truth. Because without the blood, if a person does not have Christ as that sacrifice,
They
they
can't.
still carry around the weight of their sin,
You
and they
got it.
can't step foot into the kingdom of God. And God doesn't
Nope.
desire anybody to fall. So by saying that, Pastor Paul, it appears to me that especially since this spiritual veil is starting to collapse everywhere.
Amen.
I mean everywhere, but things are speeding up. So here's what I'm saying, because we live in a very volatile time. I don't see better times coming. Right?
No, I don't either.
Weather is key. Weather is something so
Okay.
simple is key in what's happening now. As of late, flying insects have been leaving. What that tells me is that the water event is coming. I mean, it's coming. I know it may not look like it to most folks. It's coming. And Italy, that means Italy is in trouble.
Yep.
That's what it means. Italy's in trouble and Africa's in trouble.
Wow.
That's what that means to me. I've seen that land. Now, it's in a dream, of course, or some vision or something, but I've seen the people in Africa scream. I heard them scream. I heard people in Texas scream. I saw what happened to the people in Italy, and it was not good. And when the water starts moving, the land masses are going to start shifting. And it all began. You know that eruption that keeps, going on in this one particular place?
Yeah.
And people thought it would go over, and it keeps, that's where it began, right there. That's the very place that I said 10 years ago. I said, nobody wants any eruption in that place. And I was referring back to that dream. There's, just in case people don't understand, I told you, Pastor Paul, a long time ago, starting at the age of 10, I had the same dream 24 times throughout my life. I can't forget it.
Wow.
There's no way I can forget it. It was almost like I kept having it the 1994. And I suspect at that time, because I saw something in 1994 that led me to believe that a lot of other people were also given something between 1993 and 1995. In a similar manner, some kind of message went out to a lot of people during those years, and it wasn't good. So all these people that had these dreams about tsunamis before anybody was talking about tsunamis, they were not in vain. Right?
No.
It's just something that we can't see. This weather phenomenon is just a minor indication of it. Right?
It's amazing that a lot of people had these tsunami type dreams and this big water events. And just because that was, like you said, in the early mid 90s, just because maybe that event hasn't taken place yet, doesn't mean it isn't getting ready to happen. God usually works, the Bible says in Amos, he says, for the Lord can do nothing except he revealed his secrets to his servants, the prophets. That's in, Amos 3:7, I believe. So what I think what you're saying is, because you heard of other people seeing what God showed you, that it's kind of confirmation of what's coming.
Basketball, for having the same dream 24 times.
I can't even.
Right? And then, I sealed in 1991, that dream, that whole series was sealed and mailed. The 3 people have this, right?
So you wrote it down and sealed it?
Every single last bit of it.
Okay.
I sealed it and mailed it off.
I like that.
Right? So 3 people have this.
Okay.
They have it. Right now they have it. And it's also postmarked in an unopened envelope from 1991. Fastball, it was like these errors were flipping. And there were newspapers were taken away.
Wow.
And I remember talking to some folks about that. They said, that'll never happen. Right? Because I saw a bunch of headlines.
Yeah.
Right? A bunch of headlines.
Yeah.
And it's in there. So I need not, believe me, after it'll come out. But all the newspapers disappeared and everybody was looking down. When everybody's looking down, right? They had a confidence in what they were reading. And that was and I was trying to tell everybody, even in that dream, no, don't do that. They had a confidence in what they were looking down to. When that happened, the ground began to crack. Fires came from below and above, right? That's
Wow.
when Obama, this black guy, stepped on the scene, who was a
Yeah.
young senator. I
Right.
knew who that guy was long before he ever stepped in there. And but the Lord showed, listen, if the Lord can talk through a mule, he can work through me too. How about that? But these pages were
Absolutely.
flipping, so now I know we're entering into a time, right? Because when the highways begin to crack because of the heat, um, that's when the red mud is coming. This muddy red stuff, and the ash will come, right?
Yeah,
The
you've
ash is
talked
coming.
about this a lot about the ash
It's
environment.
coming. It's coming.
That one
Um,
day we would be in an ash
it's
environment where
coming.
you'd have to wear a mask to
Yeah,
even
it's coming.
breathe. It's
It's coming.
coming.
And in that same time on the East Coast, they were evacuating large places on the East Coast. They had guys out there in white hazmat uniforms. They didn't have hazmat uniforms back then with sniffers that they would hold, right? With a yellow and green tip. They didn't
Yeah.
have that back then. They have it now. And they were sniffing. They were having evacuations from some chemical or biological something, an attack, or some sort. That's right after all the little animals migrated to the north.
Mm.
All these
Mm.
critters began to migrate to the north. And then some chemical or biological attack came out. But I'm saying this because all the other portions, Pastor Paul, they have come to pass. These errors that we've gone through, and it does nothing but make my stomach drop. I'm not very good at communicating those dreams, right? Because a part of me is just a dream. The other part is very disturbing, and
Yes.
some parts you're like, well, how, I don't see how that can take place, but I just, I kind of leave it be, leave it on the
Yeah. Leave it on
burner,
the
and
burner.
then sure enough, something. So far, it's been unfolding, which is a caution to everybody that this time that we're entering into, people are going to start, some sort of bitterness is going to start taking hold of folks. They're going to let go of what they know to do is right. They're going to put
Mm.
themselves in some survival mode and
Uh-oh.
begin to take advantage of their neighbor, right?
Oh, no, no.
It's just
That's
not,
when
they're
they
going to,
lose
and
faith
most
in
people,
God. At that moment,
yeah,
Mike, they let go and they lose their faith in God and they start turning to their own devices. And
it's, it's,
that's the
it's not
mistake.
good. I mean,
No.
because I noticed even the people that are in my family, I couldn't speak to them anymore. You couldn't even
Mm.
communicate with them anymore.
Mm.
That you could tell that you could step into an environment, nobody wanted to hear what you had to say. So it was almost like certain people were pushed on the back burner for a while, and then everything broke down, right?
Wow.
But these land destabilization events, they're about to increase big time, big
Wow.
time,
We're,
and abruptly, and there's no real indication or warning about them.
so if we sum up tonight, we have big water event. We've been talking before, but this thing's coming. We talked about, yes, there is in these internment camps or facilities are being built. Rail cars are really out there. These cars will go into these internment camps. These are actually physically
Oh
being
yeah,
built.
yep,
And
yeah,
I had a dream about this, when back in the '90s, and then I wrote this book in 2012, and now the very things, many of the things I wrote, which I was just writing I was writing a fiction book. I was basically writing a novel of this is how things could play out, but I didn't realize that God was actually speaking to me. Some things I did from a dream. And it's very prophetic. I can't understand it. I call it prophetic writing. I don't know what to say. I'm not the only one that happens to. It happens to a lot of people who maybe have that spiritual gift. But you've brought out here the dreams of the water event that you've seen. The internment camps that are being built, they are being built. People are seeing them. We're hearing of contractors who have who've gotten contractors to build them, who've let it
yeah,
slip out.
yeah,
We know that there's different. And then tonight we've talked about the fact that, yeah, the white buffalo prophecy. Yeah, God works with different people in different ways. He's trying to bring them to the truth. Jesus is the truth. Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and life. He's the only way, and
yeah,
God's got to figure out a way to get people's attention. And then my other thing is this: Russia tonight. You brought up the fact that Russia, new weapon. That's bothered me because I've had that dream. Remember when I drew the suit that that
Yeah.
people would be wearing, and I said the people, the dread on the face. You're saying that they actually do have a weapon now, something about
Yeah,
ready to bring out.
they have rolled out some new inventory. They haven't deployed it yet, but it's starting to come
Do you
out.
think they're
So,
going to maybe use it on Ukraine, or what do you think their intention is?
well, their battlefront has increased. Poland has just pulled a
Yeah.
nifty trick. They widened their buffer zone, so people are taking a hardened stance in hopes that NATO is going to protect them against whatever. This whole thing is based upon the U.S. protecting, right? NATO. Because, see, President Trump let out something tonight. He wasn't supposed to do it. He made me nervous. Let me tell you why.
Did he go
He said he
somewhere
was in a
classified?
secret meeting.
Okay,
He said he was in a secret
That's
meeting.
classified.
And they asked him, they said, if we go to war with Putin, is the USA going to protect us? He was never supposed to say that.
And what
And
did
he
he
said,
say?
I told him, no, you're going to have to pay up.
Whoa!
We're not going to do anything for you. That's right. That's what he told him.
Now,
So
did
he
he
told us
did he
how.
mean?
So he wasn't playing.
Well,
right?
Yeah, he wasn't playing. So you think he was saying to them, he shouldn't have said, he wasn't supposed to say this.
No, he wasn't supposed
But
to say
he was saying to them, if you don't start paying up, we won't show up.
Yeah, that made me nervous. That made me so
Well, can I
nervous.
say something about that? I just saw this earlier this week. For the first time, all the NATO countries have now paid up. They're now up to where they're supposed to be. I just saw that report.
Yeah.
Now, that took from Trump warning them in 2017 to the fact that they know he's coming in. And this war, and they're thinking we better get our payments up to speed because this guy ain't playing.
Yeah, because he said they asked him, if we go to war with Russia, will
you help us?
Will the USA help us? And Trump said no, because you got to pay up is what you have to do. And so they paid. They were terrified of that.
Oh my
so
God,
they paid
he
up.
said that tonight.
But that made me that made me nervous. That made me. I'm gonna have to. That made me nervous.
He let that slip.
That may seem slight, but I'm telling you, that's heavy. That's heavy.
He might have meant that though tonight. I mean, he might have purposely.
Well, I'm sure he meant it.
Yeah, I know he's telling the truth,
right?
but
there are consequences. Listen, there's when you're dealing in that world, right?
Don't let stuff out like that.
Nobody should ever think that you cannot be touched. They can reach out and touch anybody they want, right? I'm just telling you they can, and that's what made me nervous because I know how ruthless these guys can be. Yeah. Now, the only way he can't be touched is if the Lord does not permit it. But my goodness, that made me nervous. I don't want to see anybody fall into that. That
he
way,
needs to be
because he's
be a little more careful. Please,
he's not schooled into it. He's not raised with it. And so, in a moment of defense and proving himself, he says that.
So he did do a little foreign policy discussion tonight. That sounds like foreign policy to me.
He was quite confident. He's very passionate. And I know those who are Democrats, they want to see a Democrat in office. But I'll tell you something. When people get older, they become cognitively distant and things don't quite match up. And sometimes that can be a hindrance. And that causes hesitation, and hesitation can translate into great loss of life, right?
Yeah.
These gaffes and mistakes do not inspire confidence in other nations. It doesn't. And so that could be very
now
dangerous.
They're going to be worried about the next time they ask him something in secret. Is he going to let that slip?
Well, I'm worried about that guy now because they don't play. They just do not play.
You're worried about what Putin will do with that since he now heard that.
Well, not really Putin. Now I'm worried about what will happen to Trump from within.
Well,
right? Fast of all, I'll tell you, they wipe people out for things like that. If they find you cannot keep your eggs in a basket,
you better.
Well, then they get rid of you and the basket. Right?
Yeah, they will.
Because if he'll let that out in a moment of rage or a moment of emotional outburst, what else is going to come out? They can't afford for that to happen, and they will eliminate all leagues, and that's what
I
made me
know.
nervous. And they have no soul behind that. I mean, they're soulless behind it.
I know.
So that just that
They're
made me very
psychopaths
nervous.
almost, aren't they? They're
And these people are just flesh
ruthless.
walking demons, is what they are. The people who do this, they'll do it and go have if they have to. They really will. But they are. When I tell you they're ruthless, they are ruthless and highly efficient. They're very efficient. That's not a game anybody should play. It's not some Tom Clancy
No, it ain't.
novel.
No,
It's
no.
not the movies. This is real life, and yeah, not a good thing for him.
Mike,
I'll be
appreciate it.
praying for him. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
let's pray for him. And let's pray for our country. That's for
Yeah.
sure. Mike, appreciate tonight. It was really, really awesome. It was really some great information. And truly, truly, I think all of us, we appreciate the insight, both knowledgeable experience and prophetic insight by the Holy Spirit that the Lord gave you tonight. Appreciate it.
Well, basketball is always an honor. I appreciate it as well.
God bless you. Look forward to talking to you again next week. And make
Okay,
sure,
Pastor.
Mike, you get prepared for that Alien Among Us webinar.
Oh, I'm ready right now.
All
I'm
right.
ready. I'm ready. I'm ready.
All right. All right. I'll talk to you later. God
All right,
bless.
basketball. God
All
bless.
right. Bye bye.